As a community performing arts center, we at the State Theater are very excited to be part of the Center Film Festival and to help bring everyone entertainment at home, virtually and safely. We would like to thank everyone who participated by buying a ticket in order to watch these wonderful films, and we would particularly like to thank those who chose the State Theater as the beneficiary for a portion of their ticket sales. We hope you enjoy your programming, and we can't wait to see you. Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us again. I'm waiting to find out that we're actually live on our website and live on YouTube and live on Facebook. So I'm going to give Casey another minute to make sure that happens. Curt, if you want to text her as well. In the meantime, I'll introduce myself. My name is Pearl Gluck. I am the co-founder of the Center Film Festival. And we're just so grateful for all of our sponsors, the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau, the Donald P. Belisario College of Communications, and the Aberle Foundation. And normally we engage a lot more businesses locally and a lot more grants. But this year, what we did is decide to try and give back instead, since we are virtual. So all of your tickets, as you know, hopefully you've gotten your tickets. If you haven't yet, you have another 24 hours or a little more to watch these films. And every ticket benefits one of the local art venues that we have here, such as Three Dots Downtown, the State Theater that you just heard about, and the Roland Theater, which is normally our home for the Center Film Festival. And I'm so glad that we're back, so I get to say normally. So we're no longer the inaugural Center Film Festival. We're in our second year. As you know, because this is the closing night film, we have had a number of incredible films, great conversations with amazing filmmakers, and this is no different. Small Time and Curl is what you just watched. The directors of Curl are in Israel. They're working on a new film, so they couldn't be here. Of course, they're 6 hours ahead, and they would have had to wake up in the middle of the night and then couldn't shoot the next day. So they did send their gratitude, and of course, you can always engage with them online or send us any questions that you have about the film. But we do have Niav Conty here. And I have to tell you that I have worked with Niav in the past. She has shot in one of my films, and it is absolutely beautiful. I love working with her. And we went to school together. We went to City College of New York. So it was totally a thrill that her debut feature, her directorial debut for a feature film, started to make the rounds at film festivals. I already knew it was amazing, but it's been winning awards, and we're so honored to be able to have it here, not only because it's a terrific film that starts really, empowers a really difficult conversation, but also because it's made in Pennsylvania. So we love featuring it for that reason. Niav, welcome to the Center Film Festival and our first live Q&A with you.
Thank you.
Where are you right now?
Great pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Pearl.
Of course. And where are you right now? Where are you located?
So I'm in Bradford County, Pennsylvania, where we shot the film. And that's where I've been staying for the last couple of months.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
But generally, I'm from New York.
New York, right. And that's where we met. I think there's a lag between my question and Niav's answer. So I'm going to not be as interruptive as I normally am. And I'll just kind of wait patiently after each question. It has to get all the way to that county. Tell us a little bit about the camp, you and your producer, the work that you've been doing there, and how this film came about from being in Pennsylvania and in this camp.
So, well, the camp is called Camp Balabay for the Fine Performing Arts, and it's a summer camp for kids. And the film started as a short film, and I had this little script, and I didn't really have anything to do with it because I didn't have what I needed to make it happen. And John Janone, the producer and the director of the camp, read the script. He really liked it. And he said, hey, I've got everything you need to make this happen. Come on out and shoot it at the camp. And then we did. So from there, obviously, things got more complicated when we moved into feature territory. which was not anticipated when we made the short, but we enjoyed the process of making the short, and it started a story that seemed like it had a lot more to say about it and places to go with it. So we made it into this feature, and all 3 parts are shot at or around the summer camp. A lot of the locations are the camp, kind of redressed to appear very different and not quite as ideal of a setting. And then also we had a lot of amazing, wonderful people in the community just allow us in, businesses open their doors, the church, the schools, homes, everyone wanted to be involved in helping to tell this story, because this is actually an area that is hit pretty hard with the opioid situation. And even in casting, all the extras were from around here, and a couple of larger roles actually were non-actors from the area. And I got to meet a lot of people who said, this is my story. If I can do anything to help, let me help. So that was really nice to see.
Tell us a little bit about the film for people who haven't watched it yet and are planning to watch it, just like maybe a line or two about the story and what drew you to that story, Niav. Like, what is your connection to this kind of story? And maybe it is just the location, what you've been seeing around you, but maybe it's something else. So tell us a little bit about the story and what drew you to create this story, and tell us the story.
I think I got that because you're cutting out a little bit, but I'm going to talk about the story then and what drew me to it, because I understood that part. So the story was kind of came out of a memory I had growing up, which then I embellished and dramatized quite a bit. I didn't grow up in, a really dark, druggy household, but I did have very intimate connections with that world when I was little. And so I just sort of wrote the short script out of odd memory I had when I was maybe 7 or 8. I guess then when it moved out of a short and into feature, my approach was, of course, I had to become more of the story of this little girl and finding out where she needed to go with her tale. But I always tried to kind of anchor it back to a memory, a personal memory I had of a moment of my childhood to make sure that it was feeling as real as possible and actually as quirky as possible, because the real stuff actually is the most quirky and odd of the stuff in the script. The story is basically this young girl growing up in a poor white area, and which is kind of ravaged by opioid use, and she's kind of shuttled around and has no adult guidance of any value whatsoever. The adults in the picture are always more confusing than helpful. And so it's basically about her trying to exist and to keep going and to adapt to all the different situations she's put in, because she's kind of just, placed here, placed there, placed there. And find who she is through all of this, which is what usually, hopefully, adult presences can help a child find who they are. But in this case, she's really on her own for that discovery. So she kind of has to work it through.
Yeah, and I feel like people use the word authentic a lot, and I think that's extremely fair to say about your piece, but understanding where you actually came from, the part of you that you put into this young girl's character, even if it's not the literal details of Pennsylvania or that specific addiction or that type of mom or that kind of boyfriend character that enters into the mom's life and therefore her life. I love the way, when we try and teach film, we talk a lot about how you use your own story to inspire what you're going to write, but that doesn't mean you're literally telling your own story, which of course you can. But how do you do it? How do you bring your truth into fictionalized characters? And I feel like your piece really speaks to that. In addition to this little girl, are there other pieces of what you know that you've put into these other characters, even though it's a highly fictionalized story?
For sure. The mom character is very definitely inspired by someone in my family. And well, actually, it got rather confused. It was a lot more realistic, but the religious aspect of the grandmother actually came out of that character. I wrote a version where it was the mom who was a whole progression where she turned to God and to religion to get through. And that's very true. But I took it away from her and I gave it to the grandmother character. And a lot of things like that, like they're real, they're there, but it just ended up working better to place them elsewhere or adjust them to the story's needs.
And the sensitivity that you have in writing these characters, because you know them so well in one form or another, even though, again, the story is informed by something you want to make a difference and make a social impact. So you write a narrative structure that can tell that story. And you know these characters well in one way or another. How does that translate into casting? How did that go for you? So we're going to talk about the short first, right? Because then it turns into the feature. So you write this short, and how does it translate then into finding characters that can navigate that story for you? Because they're the ones front of camera. How did you find them? What was your process working with them? Did they understand the content? I'm assuming they did, because I know that you cast locally. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Casting is everything. So of course it's very difficult because it's everything to me. And if it's cast right, then your work as a director is so much easier and kind of flows naturally. And if it's not, then you're kind of in a really difficult situation. So it took a while. I just put announcements up, on these sites where castings take place, and got a bunch of tapes and then saw people. And generally, when it was the right person, it clicked right away. I knew it in an audition. Obviously finding the girl to play Emma was tricky because I was looking for, I guess, an 8 to 9 year old or 8-ish with flexibility, but that's a really difficult age to cast, I find. There's not that many options that appealed to me, like right away. There's a lot of kind of child actors out there who are doing that thing, and who I knew would would fall into a place that wouldn't work for me and for this role. So I was looking more at less experienced actors. But of course, it's a risk. Audrey applied. She was in Indianapolis, I think, living out there. I just got a really nice feeling from her submission. And then we had a Skype interview, like a little Skype audition, which was, so awkward and weird and difficult. And she had never acted before. Mm. And then they were coming through New York. So, I asked them to come and audition for me if they were actually motivated to do it, because I couldn't possibly cast her without really meeting her. It was just way too risky. And so we met, and there was something very pure and wonderful about her. And I realize in casting actors, what I'm looking for more than casting child actors is listening. And that's actually a really difficult thing to get in a pure way with child actors auditioning. And she was able to just be there and listen and look, and didn't have to portray anything. So, she just gave this pure thing and had no experience whatsoever. It was obviously going to be really scary for me to go into this, not knowing if she could pull it off. But I had a good feeling, and she did amazing.
Niav, this isn't your first time directing, right? So how does, we'll come back to talk more about the casting and your film, but how does it, just to back up for a second, how does it fit into your work right now? Like when it first emerged, how did it fit in? What made you say, this is the time to write Small Time? This really fits into my body of work. Because I know that it's a risk to direct kids, but it certainly wasn't your first time directing. So maybe give us a little context about your work, your directing style, and then taking on Small Time.
I don't know how it fits in, I don't do things like that, really. I just did it because I made the short and I liked this character and I liked the actress playing it, and I liked all of the characters in it, and I really wanted to know more. So I didn't think about, my body of work or anything. I just wanted to see what would happen if we got back together and explored further. What I do know is that my themes end up always being, and this is not really because I do it consciously, but it comes out like this, is the themes are always about sort of self-discovery or things like that, identity, in some form or another, figuring out who one is, or not figuring it out, and I would say the tones that I always end up working within are darker tones with a dark humor lining. So I like uncomfortable, kind of awkward situations, and I like, setting them up and then allowing actors to explore them.
So the short is called Joyride, right? And it's got Audrey in there as the main character as well. And then you continue to work with some of the other actors in the feature as well. So the boyfriend character repeats, right? Who else? The mom.
The mom is in part 1 and 2. The boyfriend characters in all 3 parts. And none of this was really decided beforehand, because I wrote the short, we made the short, then I wrote part 2 out of the short, and we made part 2, and then I wrote part 3.
Yeah.
So it's not like there were arcs that were defined at all. They kind of came out of whatever happened in the last part, and what the actors brought to their characters, and where I thought it would be interesting to take them. And then there's a couple of major characters that come in part 3. We're talking about this after people have seen it, so we can say who they are, or
yes, we can. We're presuming people have seen the film, and even what you are sharing, I'm sure, for those who haven't seen it, we'll encourage them to watch it. And again, these are available until midnight on Monday, so you can keep watching it. We also started a bit early, so if anyone's tuning in now, you can just go back to the beginning, but you can also keep listening now for live Q&A. We'll go for another 10 minutes and get ready for our awards ceremony. But Niav, we have a question from someone in the audience, Deborah Kahan-Kolb, who I think you know, because it is with her that we worked on our film together called Bright Meat. Deborah, thank you for your question. Niav, I'm curious about the evolution from your short Joyride to this feature, Small Time. So maybe that was going to be my next question anyway, Deborah. As usual, 10 steps ahead of me. What is the evolution? I know you already talked about how the short made you want to do the feature. So maybe share some of the reasons that you wanted to make a feature based on that short, what happened on set, what happened as you were making it, what happened as you were screening it, and if there's anything else and any other reasons that it went from Joyride to Small Time.
I mean, Joyride ended up being a really one of those, I don't know how it happened or why, but it was so easy to shoot. Like it was the smoothest short I've ever shot. And it was just very enjoyable and lovely. So that definitely contributed. Of course, when we moved into the feature, both part 2 and part 3 were like so painfully difficult, but that's how it goes. I guess story-wise, Joyride is part of Small Time. It's the earliest part. Joyride was kind of an intimate moment, and with the feature, I wanted to bring it into a larger picture and talk more about society, and like speak about this girl's perspective on a world and larger things that are going on in the world, and just all of these things that we kind of take for granted as being in an adult world, that we accept them, but that for a newcomer to these ideas or even tones or textures or ways of being together, they're very much a discovery and kind of bewildering. And I feel bewildered by the world and how the world is.
I can't imagine why, Niav.
So it was kind of allowing her to put ourselves, the audience, into a place of, oh, this is what our world is here. Let's look at it again with a little more innocence than we're used to looking at it.
Yeah, I like what you just said, because the simplicity for me is what's so powerful. So many things that are powerful about your film for me, but one, in addition to a young female character looking at the world through her eyes as she's growing, her one, parental figure, also a woman, there's just so many layers, but to the point, the simplicity of it is what's fascinating, is how you were able to craft something so clear and so minimal and yet there are so many issues that you're tackling with it. And it doesn't feel like an issue-driven film. Not that that's a problem, but it really does feel like you can just watch this girl go through the life that she has been born into, and navigate all of these struggles that are so real in our country and frankly not being dealt with. And to see it dealt with in a film like this on all these layers, and yet it's just one little girl's story, and we get to follow her and kind of honor her journey. So I don't know if that's just what you naturally do, or is that something you thought about? Like, you know what we do sometimes as filmmakers is we'll write out all the things we want to tackle, put them on index cards, figure out which part of the film is going to handle this, and where do you go with it. How did you manage to, or what was your process when you were figuring out how to stay really focused, like you said, on her innocence, but yet making sure to, in a way, responsibly and ethically deal with some of the issues that it raises? And maybe even talk about some of the issues that it raises when you answer.
I was conscious of always trying not to be heavy-handed or be decided on how the film felt about any of these things, which is kind of difficult on certain of the things. But I think the way the film manages to sort of stay kind of neutral, rather than moralistic, is through the character of Emma, played by Audrey, because she's not judging anyone. And I think almost, or very, very rarely, does she ever judge any of the characters in there. She's just kind of, dealing with them and trying to make the best, often, of situations and of people and what they're giving her. And so that, I think, was the key into not getting kind of preachy, which I feared, at certain moments it could. And the humor, of course, her humor, the humor in the strangeness of the situation, right? You have these really dark situations and this very innocent girl, and you put them together and you just let them kind of coexist without having to make like a dramatic situation happen out of it. The drama for me is that relationship between the innocence and the dark oddness of the adult world, and how, like, that little line that plays between them.
Yeah. And that's one of the tenets of strong screenwriting, is not to judge your characters, is to let them, obviously you have to know how you're structuring and how you're writing your characters, but if you don't judge them, they get to speak for themselves. And in some ways, that level of craft is so powerful in your film. So speaking of roles in the film, I know you as a director of photography as well. Did you shoot this film as well? And tell us a little bit about how you kind of went from behind the camera as the DP to the director, and also the writer. Like, you're kind of dealing with the words that you actually wrote and seeing them transform on set as the writer so you're almost like playing these three different, not necessarily always in agreement roles on a set in one person.
Well, I have to say, I got to admit, for the short, I really didn't want to shoot it. I had a DP in mind that I thought would be a good fit. It wasn't paid. Something came up. He couldn't do it. Perfectly understandable. But then I was looking for someone else who could come in, but I couldn't find the right fit. And it just felt like a delicate thing to find the right fit. And since I couldn't find that fit, I just figured I'd do it myself. I was a little trepidatious to be also the DP just because it was working with a young girl who's never acted before. It was working with a kitten. The two filmmaking rules are don't work with children or animals, and this was kind of totally working with both. So I was scared, but I figured just do it. And it ended up, I think, being a very good thing because Audrey literally had never been on a set before. And she got there like the day before. We brought her there and she was like, just this wondrous little creature, but had no idea what she was supposed to do. So I found that being there behind the camera, really close to her, was very helpful because I could, it created a relationship with me, which was natural that would happen, but that relationship also became with the camera because I was the camera. Mm-hmm. And so I think that allowed for an additional level of intimacy for her to give us, the audience, and be with us, which was really helpful. So then when we were doing the feature, because that had worked and I felt like that was kind of our connection was between this lens space. So it felt kind of important that I continue and not add another presence there of like a filter between her and me.
Yeah. And by the time you were shooting the feature, you had already worked with her on the short. So that level of trust was already set.
Right. I mean, the short is the feature. The feature was part 2 and 3 of the short. So it was just a continuation. Yeah.
That actually answers.
I wanted to say, I forgot.
Sure.
Wait, we've got lag time. I wanted to mention that I just forgot my thought. What was it? Oh, right. Part of the reason, part of the response to Deborah in how it evolved was that the reason I included the short into the feature is because it's a story about growing up, and Audrey was 7 years old in part 1 in the short, and so it seemed like it just had to happen to accept her as her, like what she gave as the youngest incarnation of this character, and then watch her grow up. So it actually took 3 years, and she grows up in between, and she matures in between. And so that ended up being quite important to allow that time in between, just because this is like a time in her life when so many changes take place.
Right.
And I think it would have violated the theme of the film not to embrace that in some way.
Right. So that answers Rebecca Inlow's question about, she wrote, I loved this movie. Where can I find Joyride? Is it available to watch anywhere? And the answer is, you just did. That is the first part of Small Time. So, Niav, I can talk to you for much longer, but certainly for another hour. Unfortunately, we have to move on to our our award ceremony. And before we part, I just want to remind people, if they're just listening now, this was scheduled for 8 o'clock, but it's still on, and you can just go back to the beginning and watch it through. And we're so sorry that we can't continue to take your questions live. I want to read you another comment from Deborah. I applaud you for taking on such difficult content and making it personal through the lens of innocence. So powerful. I couldn't agree more. Niav, before I let you go, we are in a college town. You yourself teach. What is it that you have learned from this experience? And now I mean the feature. And I know you just finished shooting another movie that you can share with us and with our students and with our community that you want to impart to us before we move on. What did you learn from working on this project that maybe strengthens you as a filmmaker, teaches you something about certain vulnerabilities you didn't know you had as an artist, or something, anything along those lines that might help us might help inspire us further on all of our artistic journeys?
Gosh, that's tough.
Sorry.
I mean, I learned about perseverance, and you think you have limits, and those limits can be stretched, and that's what's so enjoyable about ambitious projects is you and everyone in them feel stretched afterwards. And I mean, that's a great gift to give oneself, I think.
So I think that's a really good way to end, especially since this whole film festival is an example of perseverance. We're all trying to figure out these complicated new ways of connecting. We wish we could have had you here in Center County, though you are no stranger to Pennsylvania and some of the realities around us here in this county as well. Niav, it is such a pleasure to talk to you always, and we hope to see you again next year at the Center Film Festival, and hopefully you'll get to see the Roland, which is the theater that Rebecca Inlow manages, and with her partner Kevin. Is there anything else you want to add before we say goodnight?
I just want to say thank you. I so appreciate you having small time in this festival and all the energy you bring to it, a dynamic conversation. You are a jewel, Pearl.
Wow. Well, it takes a village, and let me tell you, there is a whole village behind this curtain. Again, Niav, thank you so much. Really appreciate your voice as part of this festival, and especially as closing night. I think it's a very important film told in this really beautiful, poetic, singular way. And I think it is the children that we need to listen to and their stories that we need to tell. So I truly appreciate your voice and the larger narrative of how to use storytelling to make social impact. Thank you so much, Niav Conty. We hope to see all of you back here for the award ceremony. It's going to be bizarre, and we've never tried it before online. It's strange, and we don't know what's going to happen. We might give awards to all the wrong people. We might even give you an award. But I think we're going to do the best we can behind the scenes. But for that reason alone, you should come and watch it because we have no idea what's going to happen. Talk about history. But once again, it is great to have all of you online. Feel free to send us notes or feedback, and absolutely reach out to Niav. How do they reach you, Niav? What is your website? Is it niavconty.com?
It's niav-film.com.
Why, of course it is. So niav-film.com. Thank you again so much for your voice and your vision. Have a good night, everyone, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.